Here we go. So I'd like to know which set of soft skills you feel is your strongest. I thought that would be an interesting way to start.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Dory. Great.
Okay, great. Okay. Sorry about that.
No problem. And you can mute yourself when you're not talking.
Yep, okay, got it.
You know, that's fine. Everybody can mute themselves, I believe, on your own phone or on the screen. So I should do mine. Okay. So we have one person who has not responded yet. It could be that, there we go. Okay, I will show you the responses. So clearly, we've got all of them covered, which is great. We can go home now. But what would you say about this? So Laura is surprised. What surprises you, Laura? And you should feel free to use your, yeah, I did too. Yes, forced choices are never easy, Suzanne. So, right. So Angela's saying they'll apply to some degree, and Suzanne was saying it was hard to select. Part of it is that I have these skills. Yes. So I actually, that's why I thought number one would come through. And my thinking in terms of my own choice, exactly, was that some days I'm better at some skills than others. And I think I like to be thought of as creative. I think I want to have communication be a given. Right. You're right. That's right. Half Joe's creativity. That was very good specificity, Justine. Because if I had asked you for your rationale for saying half, it's just that there's a strong group there versus the others being scattered. And if they don't, they should, right, Scylla? Okay, well, let's go for it the other way now. I'll clear the poll, and I'll ask you to say which you think are your weakest. Let me get back to a polling. Okay, which would you say, which one is your weakest? Ignoring what I have written up there as strongest, just which one is your weakest? We have 5 people. We're waiting on 5. No, I won't tell. I promise. No, this is recorded, but it doesn't say who's responding to what. I have 2 people waiting on 2 people. There we go. Let's see what we had, what we said. So I keep voting with the herd on this one because I also said leadership skills in part because of the making decisions for me. I am such a Pisces, and I go back and forth with the river. Well, actually, the river current is one direction, but I try and swim upstream. And I sometimes worry that my feedback is not as positive as it needs to be. I tend to get critical too fast. Yes, Angela. So Angela's saying giving honest feedback is sometimes difficult, particularly if it's negative. Okay, well, this is actually a great launching pad for Webinar 2 because we have some very specific connections to soft skills today. So let's take a look and see where we're going. So just to remind everybody where we've been, and I think it might be a little optimistic to say where we've been in the interim session based on the 5 responses I got on my survey, which leads me to think that the other majority of responses would have been, it wasn't good timing. I think it was difficult to have an interim assignment over the holidays, whereas I think, in some cases the thought was, oh, there'll be more time. Realistically, there probably wasn't. But our first, any comments there? Thought I heard a comment. Okay. Feel free to chime in with a comment. Now you're all on mic or phone or chat. So we worked on career awareness, self-exploration, and career exploration to some degree in the webinar, but most of that was pushed over into the interim session with the opportunity to look at module 3, unit 3 of the ESL Pro, preparing English learners for work and career pathways. Those titles are just, they don't roll trippingly off my tongue, but HIDE is a wonderful module, and an opportunity to look at the digital magazine on career pathways, as well as a number of other items in the content area. The most important element for us of that were the 2 checklists, one for the instructor and one for the administrator, to self-assess where you are with contextualizing English language instruction in your classroom or your program. And it looks like some of you were able to do that, but maybe not all of you. So we will definitely focus on making sure that gets done in our second interim session. So what we're focusing on today really what we're focusing on are some of the concepts that we had that were brought up in that checklist, and I mentioned that in the survey as well. And you don't have to recall them. I'm going to bring them up on the PowerPoint, so we'll work with them. But we need to at least start vocalizing about our inquiry. And if we have some ideas, for example, Laura and Suzanne mentioned on the survey that they had some experience with 2 of the inquiries, one resources and the other state support. And I think Carol did as well with the resources. Laura was differentiation, sorry. So we're gonna work on that at the beginning of our webinar this morning, and then we're gonna look specifically at how the connection between the CCRS and rigor and contextualization takes place, and we'll do that through multi-level questions and text-dependent questions with readings on careers and other workplace texts. And then we'll also discuss how team tasks fit into employability skills. So that's where we're going with the webinar today. After today, the hope is that you will make use of some of the materials in the content area, either with your teachers or in your classroom, and you'll be in a position to reflect on that in the discussion. And our final webinar is an opportunity for you to say what other support you need and move forward towards completing an action plan, which is essentially just that checklist, but it's got the next steps written in. So for example, if you would really like to have more resources for contextualizing. You'd like your program to have more resources. And you've indicated that on the checklist, then your next steps, your action plan would be how you plan to go about acquiring those resources. So that's it's really quite simple, but there's a lot of thinking that goes behind writing those next steps. So it's not so much time at your desk as time thinking about this. And hopefully that will be something that will fill up your commuting time. Welcome back, Scylla. And then on session 3.2, we'll also look at problem scenarios as a one way of working with contextualization. So here we go. Our goals for today. Anything on here you want to clarify? The power of wait time.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to save this question for the next interim session to have a full discussion, because it didn't look like anyone chose this as their top choice I know it didn't look like it didn't. No one chose this as their top choice on the survey. In fact, many people put it as 7, which is the very last choice. But I would hope that by our next webinar, we'd be in a position to talk more to this, because this is really where we can then identify what supports we need from the state. Does anyone have a comment on this before we move to the next point? Okay. Laura just said that she put it last because she knew how important it was. And so that's true then for the left side, the benefits, but in terms of the challenges, we need to identify those. And there are those. I mean, some of them we identified last time just in terms of learners having different goals in the classroom, or learners having different proficiency levels. Okay, Laura, you want to just list a couple of your challenges? Or just actually, you don't even need to list them, because it'd be nice, it'll be recorded if you say it on the mic.
Okay, sure. So what I'm doing is working on a new pilot program that is offering classes to students in the context of being, it's called English for Advancement, and it's part of a Pay for Success program, which is a partnership between the state and private funders. So it's this new model where the idea is that we get people who have fairly low English skills, and we get them learning the English they need to go on job interviews, apply for jobs, go on job interviews, and, just the basic things they need to maintain those jobs, to get them going. And one of the biggest challenges we started this in the fall, and we have several different sites and so forth. So one of the biggest challenges we're finding is that we haven't been able to get, and we have quite a few constraints on who we're allowed to take as students, which really is tough. But what that's ended up doing is meaning that we have in our classes an enormous range. So we have students going from basic, in terms of language level, going from basic to advanced in one class. And these classes are 9 hours a week. So this has been for all the teachers, and as we bring teachers on board, because we're expanding the program, more teachers are coming on, this has sort of, been the absolute hardest thing to deal with, because there are many ways to look at differentiation. But, when the rubber meets the road, if you're teaching English, it's about, can this person, what level are you teaching at, and why do you deal with it when you have such a wide multi-level class? So that is absolutely the biggest challenge that I'm looking at now, and I'm also the lead on our curriculum development plan. And so, we started off with a draft of the plan that we started going with, and then realized that it just wasn't really going to work because of this. We made some assumptions about the students we would get that were wrong. And so I would say that is the biggest challenge that I'm facing and that we're facing in this program. There are obviously other ones because, as you said, there are other ways to look at how people are different and therefore how you need to differentiate. In terms of past education, past professional experience, what kinds of environments they're in now and what challenges they're actually facing in their lives. So there are all those things too, but that's the biggest one.
Thank you, Laura. Well, that's, and what I hope we can do is maybe put that we'll bring that differentiation up in a minute, and hopefully the rest of the group can provide some ideas or sympathy. I think we will tend to go for sympathy first, but then I think there may be some ideas that come out, which is what I'm hoping our community would be able to do for each other throughout. Okay. Anybody else have any comments on challenges? Okay, well, they'll be waiting for us, so it's not. All right. I don't see that Rika-May is here, and Carol, I know you said you don't have a mic, but maybe in the chat pod, you could list a couple of the resources that you had found, and I put some up as well that I'll share. But this was one of the inquiries: is what resources can we locate for developing career awareness, exploring careers, or conducting skill inventories. That was one of our inquiries that came up from our webinar last time. So Carol, if you want to type in a resource that you found. Oh, terrific. So Rika-May, maybe you will be able to participate in this as well. The reason that these names are on here is that these are, when I provided the survey that asked which of these inquiries you felt most comfortable talking about, Carol and Rika-May listed this as number one. So that's why. So Rika-May, if you happen to have a mic, you could speak right up. The ICA is going to be mentioned in a moment, Dory. Okay, terrific. Look at Angela's got stuff up there. That's terrific. So the ICA, I have that on the next slide. The Mass, I don't know if you pronounce that CIS or CIS, ONET, and Career Ready. In the content area, I did provide you with a number of resources and a number of links, LINKS as opposed to LINCS. Let's take a look at some of the things that I mentioned. Oh, I heard somebody. Who's speaking? Oh, Rika-May. Are you speaking? Okay, I'm not hearing. Okay, good. So Carol's saying in the big resource book there are 3 surveys. These are a great way to help a student know what they're interested in, and then for us to contextualize vocabulary, listening skills, and the responses needed for the career. And is the big resource book the ICA, this, let's see where to go. This one right here, Integrating Career Awareness, the yellow book, is that which one you're referring to? So I wonder if it's this one then. There are a number of online resources. Oh, I'm sorry, Rika-May. Kate, any suggestions for that? Am I cutting out for you too?
No, I can hear you just fine. Aside from checking the connection, my only other suggestion, and it's sort of like when you have a problem with your computer, reboot, maybe exit and try to come back in, Rika-May. I'm not 100% sure why that would be a problem.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, yep.
Yes.
Can you hear me now? Well,
Yes.
that's a miracle. I've been trying for 20 minutes. Okay.
Yay. Okay.
Okay.
So Rika May, welcome, and persistence paid off. Do you want to speak to the resources that you've been using?
Well, we do Career Ready 101, and that is an online computer program, and the students they explore the different career clusters, and then we go on to the ONET and do some research on different jobs that interest them. We have a paper survey we fill out so they can explore different careers.
Oh, terrific.
Do you want to know more about the Career Ready 101?
Sure.
Well, the Career Ready 101 we also use for workplace skills, the reading for information, the applied math, and locating information. And there's certain levels that they need to reach to be ready for certain careers. And the Career Ready 101 lists the scores that they need before they're ready to enter the field of interest. The career clusters just go through all 16 different career clusters and different jobs in each career cluster. And then when we go on to ONET, we can look whether it's a bright outlook, a green job, and we can also go to Career One Stop to look at jobs that are available in the Merrimack Valley area and average pay.
Rika May, what level learners are you working with?
They are level 3 to 7. So the SPL3s really struggle because the career clusters on Career Ready 101 is a very dense material. The SPL 5, 6, and 7s can really research a career that interests them and then, present the information to the class. The 3 and 4 SPL do a much more basic version.
And is Career Ready 101 a product that is, it's a published product, or it's something that's available free? How do you get that?
Well, we've had it for a very long time. We were the first to have it in the Merrimack Valley area, and we purchased it for a lot of money. But now I do believe there are different ways that it's available for free in the Merrimack Valley. I don't really know too much about the actual accessing of it, but I know that Northern Essex Community College has it, and different adult learning centers. There is a way to get it for free through the state. I believe that the state government purchased unlimited licenses for it. But I'm not too privy to the business end of it because we did purchase it. So,
Could I just ask from the group your familiarity with Career Ready 101? Are you using it in your programs? Just put a Y in the chat pod for yes and an N in the chat pod for no. So Cynthia, that's your yes? Okay, thank you, Suzanne. Well, it sounds like, Rika May, based on your feedback.
waiting list. Okay, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it sounds like based on your feedback that it's something that is for learners with higher levels of proficiency, and that you have to scaffold quite a bit for lower.
Yes.
But that's good to know. That's really good to know. Thank you so much. Well, I thought I would share on the off chance that some of these things did get mentioned. I'm sorry? So I thought I would share a few other sites. Rika May made mention of the Career One Stop. We actually have that in the content area as something to as something to look at for finding the videos. I also put the day in the life videos, which is on the left side of this screen, the link for that. This PowerPoint will be up in the content area too if you want to click on the live links. Skills to Pay the Bills is really a secondary program, but it's a terrific set of videos. It isn't demeaning to adults at all. It works really well. I happen to be looking for some videos just to see what kinds of Massachusetts workplace videos were out there, and I found the Cianbro, I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I think they said it very differently. Anybody want to help me pronounce it? Okay. Oh, help. Thanks. Okay, well, I'm just going to call it Cianbro then. It's a construction company, but their website has all kinds of videos that would be really useful for listening, focused listening practice. They talk about what makes it great to work there. They use all of this incredibly appropriate academic workplace language. So there's teamwork and I put teamwork up here, but I'm trying to remember some of the other words that are all captioned. I highly recommend it. If you are on your mic or you're on your phone and you're not talking, be sure to press mute. We've already made mention of the Occupational Outlook Handbook. I wanted to point out that Newsela has a new feature called Dream Jobs. They are from The Guardian, so they are British, but they've adapted them, certainly for American English, they're adapted. They do have some nice intertextuality, just from the standpoint of thinking about what the job would be like in the UK versus in the US. But there's a lot of crossover, so it's not too odd. They are Lexiled, so you can get a much lower level of a reading, or you can get the original authentic reading. I just tried doing some tags so I could see quickly what would come up. And, I got this What We Learned from Interviews with 100 American Workers. I just was looking really for the Studs Terkel kind of interview. And this came up, and it looks great. It looks like there are a lot of segments. Remember, when we were working with learners at lower levels, and even at higher levels, there's no need to use the entire piece of text. We can really work with, yes, that's what I just said. All the slides go into Blackboard. Yeah. That Kate just asked that question. But what we learned from the interviews with 100 American Workers, if you just took one paragraph from that, which would be complex text, and got the learners through that paragraph, there's a tremendous sense of achievement, and there's a lot of learning that goes on. So I've proposed, if you're looking for materials, to try some of these tags, day in the life, top 10 jobs, most dangerous jobs, top 10 jobs for people who like, these are great opportunities for us to explore and research, but also these are, searches that we can have our learners do, especially that most dangerous jobs search, or top 10 interesting jobs, or top 10 jobs you never thought you could have. There's actually an infographic on that. And then, of course, there are these very robust resources for us. And I know Dory mentioned the ICA. Massachusetts and South is way ahead of the curve on this one. And so many people are going back to this now. The digital magazine that I shared with you that is part of the ESL Pro project. There is a Texas Learns put out a contextualization kit, and within that is a career-infused classroom checklist, and that's up in the content area as well. So that gives you an idea of what you can be doing. And the beautiful employability skills framework, which, as you can see right from the top, it starts with, I'm hoping you can see it, but applied academic skills, critical thinking skills, interpersonal skills. These are the foundations of what we do in the classroom in any case. The scientific principles and procedures and the math strategies and procedures, we actually want to start bringing in from a content area, and they're certainly very workplace appropriate. So what comments do you have about the resources that were shown, if any? What questions?
Certainly, I don't have any questions, but I have used the Integrating Career Awareness in the ABE and ESL classroom. And I actually did that entire curriculum for 1 year in the beginning when we started the Career Pathways program. And it was fabulous.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it is. It's terrific. Well, my comment to those of you that are saying that it's time consuming, it absolutely is. And what I think this points to again and again and again is the need for community within the field, community within our programs, because it should not be a task that a single teacher takes on. Just as working with the CCRS and identifying how those standards correlate to our curriculum, we need to have an opportunity for all of us to come together and identify what works well and what's appropriate for which learner. And hopefully publishers are getting on board and you'll get some materials that'll be ready-made. But the heart of contextualized instruction is authenticity. So if you go from what your outcome is for your learners, yeah, Laura, I would agree. And why could we not do something like that on a Google Doc where it's collaborative and people are just sharing in that? So that maybe will be something that would come out of the webinar series. Dory, maybe this is something that SABIS wants to look at. Suzanne, thinking in terms of what kind of support the state can provide, this would be something that would be right at the heart of it. And so many of you are and not just you, but your colleagues are already working with this. Oh, Suzanne, did you want to speak? Please do. I would encourage anybody who wants to say something. I saw, Suzanne, you raised your hand. Maybe you were just raising your hand as in preach. That's true. Or maybe you were because you wanted to make a point. But if you would like to speak, please interrupt me and raise your hand. I see right away when you raise your hand and I can stop speaking, just like that. Don't ask me to do that in my real life, but I can definitely do it during the webinar. Okay, well, going back to the idea that we want to start from the outcome, and that narrows everything down. So if you if you have a long-term lesson plan, thank you, Dory. If you have a long-term lesson plan and you know where you're going, then you really do narrow down your search. So if you say, I mean, there is a lot out there, and maybe you won't get the absolute perfect resource the first time around, but you'll get something that will work for you. And then you'll be in a position to pop it on this list and annotate what worked or didn't work. And I think if we have a checklist that goes along with it, so that the person who's annotating doesn't have to write extensively, but can just indicate what level it's best for, what skills it works on. Oh, thank you, Suzanne. Okay, so Suzanne is saying that the state has currently released an RFP for time to develop curriculum, and it's due in February. Please see this month's monthly mailing for more details, for those of you that are not on the chat. So all of you should do that. See the month's monthly mailing. So this was something that actually connects to the idea of learners with different goals benefiting from a contextualized lesson, because if we have sufficient resources, I'm going to let Dory and Suzanne continue that conversation on the chat. So if we have learners that have interests in different careers and we know about the one-stop videos or the occupational Outlook handbook, we have those in our pockets, so to speak, then it becomes possible to pull different or have learners go to different resources, but learning the same reading skills, the same listening skills. So the framework of the skills is applied onto their different interests. And the what Rika May mentioned, the occupational clusters becomes something that's very useful for organizing global interests. So Laura, did you want to say anything more about differentiation? Is there something you've found that's worked well so far?
Yes, I would say, and we actually just had a curriculum meeting about at the beginning of the month with the 5 teachers that we have in the program right now, and we tried to share what we're doing around differentiation, and you probably know the work of Robin Lovren.
Mm-hmm.
Robin Lovren. So some of us had gone to her training in September, I think it was, or early September maybe, and we started to apply the idea of having these stations around the room with that, where students could sort of go and do different things based on their level. And that, I mean, that also takes a lot of prep. We can't always get into the space that much ahead of time. But even on a small scale, that has been one of the things I think that people are finding a lot of success with, is creating activities that students sort of do themselves together and that they can self-select. So for example, one of the things that I did and that a bunch of us are doing is, let's say people have different occupational aspirations. And even if they're at different English levels, you do something where you sort of focus on a vocabulary, and you can actually break people into groups based on those different things too. And again, it depends on level, but to keep it simple, let's say I've got, I don't know, 8 students, and 3 of them are very low level. I mean, this is sort of what I had. 1 or 2 in the middle, and then there are a couple who are very advanced. What I started doing was I would give the advanced students, if you have more than 1, you can put them together and give them projects to work on. So I would sort of do that. And then, so they might be doing a reading on interview tips or something like that, and then have some things they needed to do and practice interviewing with each other or something like that. And then for the lower level, some focused vocabulary teaching, and then having them create, for example, maybe vocabulary with skills. Say maybe they're going up for, like a housekeeping job or a restaurant job, to have them create their own vocab cards with skills, and then have them practice with each other playing games and asking questions, like you can play Go Fish or something like that. And they have to ask each other, do you have experience cooking breakfast? Do you have experience mopping the floor? And they have to answer yes or no. And if the more advanced students, you can give them a task that's harder. So they can be playing the same game, but doing a harder question. So if they're very low level, they can if they just say yes or no, and they just get the question out somehow, you're happy. And then if they're more advanced, they have to say, if they don't have a skill, they say, well, I can't do that. But I can do this other thing, or I don't do that now, but I did it in my last job, or so you're asking them to employ more complicated grammatical structures, more tenses and that kind of thing. So I would say that so far that's been one of the most successful things that we've been doing, is sort of creating these game-like interactions that allow students to sort of participate at their level. And the other thing is that everyone benefits from, the other thing and that's very focused on people beginning to use language, both that's contextual to specific kinds of work and also practicing answering the kinds of questions that you need to answer when you go on an interview. That's a lot of what we're doing is, how do you answer these questions? Tell me about yourself. What are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? What are your accomplishments? That kind of thing. So that's, anyway, so that's one thing that I think has helped. And the other thing I'll say is that if you have access to technology and computer labs, that's also another way that really helps you to sort of individualize instruction for people, because you can have people work in pairs, high-low, on a computer, so that the high is the person who's like more computer savvy and also knows English better and therefore can see what they're doing better on the internet, can work with the lower level person. You can also, I don't know, so anyway, so that's another, I won't go into more about that, but so that's another area I think that's really great. And the other thing I found a lot is that I started developing, I was working with so many low-level students that I started developing chants to help them with pronunciation and just getting the rhythms of the language to be able to get more fluid. And I found that all levels really enjoyed doing the same chant. So I wrote one that had to do with, do you have experience, I just did this recently so it's in my mind. Do you have experience mopping the floor? Yes, I'm a housekeeper. I've done that before. So getting to know how you ask and answer questions like that. And even advanced students gain fluidity working on things like that. But you can break it down more for people who are lower level to work on, how do you pronounce aisle? What is aisle? How's that different from ILL, ill? So there's some ideas that have worked for us.
That's great. That's wonderful. I'm just putting in your chant so that the thing that I think we maybe won't focus on as much by virtue of the fact that we don't feel expert in it is pronunciation, and yet what a workplace skill, comprehensibility,
Yeah.
And so those chants have to because I think 90% of of the issues is that they're not comprehensible. I shouldn't say 90%, but a good percent of the issues for our learners are that they're not comprehensible, and it's it comes through pronunciation, intonation, stress, rhythm, very the super segmentals, but it also comes through accuracy and grammar. There's that element as well.
Well, that's true. And one other thing just that I recently acquired was a word board, the sentence where you get a bunch of words and people can create their own, and then you put them in this one's a table one, but I've seen the wall ones too. And that's something where when students come in, I can give them for that, have students work together to do a very specific task. And if they're low level, I say, something like make a sentence out of 3 words, or 2 words or something. And then if they're higher level, I say, make a sentence that has, 2 clauses or something. I mean, that, if they're really advanced. So that's something else where, again, people are working. I think a lot of the differentiation comes into realizing that you can't teach so much as you can facilitate people's independent learning.
Mm-hmm. And that, of course, is one of the keys for 21st century learning is learner autonomy and self-directed learning. And so our support, and we're going to go to that in a moment with how we ask questions and prompt learners higher level thinking. So there's an aside on there, but I just want to point out that Dory mentioned that there is pronunciation workshop being done throughout the state. And that's terrific because pronunciation really gets short shrift. It's something that's key. Mm-hmm. Well, we're not going to focus. Yes, I think chants are great fun as well. Rika May does tongue twisters. We're not going to focus on this conversation for this webinar, but I want you to know that this will be part of our conversation in February. So as you go through and start working more and more with the contextualization And I'd like you to consider this, because not you're here, and you already know how critical contextualization is for our learners' movement onto career pathways or into their civic goals or their parenting. But what we want to think about is, how do we help our colleagues? How do tutors understand, who maybe don't have the same ESOL background that we do? How do they understand how grammar would fit into a contextualized lesson, or the fact that it addresses 4 skills? So I'm just going to touch on this here, and then we'll have a discussion on it in February to see, how you did it. But this is the concept of language development, is that we're working with the 4 skills, and that pronunciation is coming out of both listening and speaking. We know pronunciation relies on recognition of the sounds before you can pronounce them. That vocabulary and grammar run through all 4 skills, and that spelling comes out really strongly and being able to read effectively and write effectively. So we know that's all part of the deal. That really animates beautifully on a real PowerPoint, but Blackboard doesn't let us do that. So let's look and see how that contextualization happens in reading and writing. I don't think any of this would be a surprise to you, that we're going to get a lot of reading and writing practice through charts and graphs, which appear throughout academic and workplace reading. We're going to help learners with reading strategies by having them look at profiles of different workers and bios. We can actually also help them with the reading strategy of text features when they're looking at forms or reports. I believe that Laura and Rika May mentioned the idea of researching or looking at different jobs, and the learners looking at these jobs, doing a research project. CCRS asks for short research projects. This is the perfect fit, because they can go, I hope some of you got a chance to look at the digital magazine with the template that Rana Meiji created with Donna Price, I think, about ways that learners can go on a website and what information they can pull off in order to create a report. And if you didn't see that, take a look. It's in the digital magazine, or the companion learning resources, the other name for that. And then in terms of the writing process, we can have learners write about their career goals. We can have them write about the challenges or benefits of certain jobs. We can have them summarize. We can have them shadow someone even through a video. It doesn't have to be that they actually go to the job, but if they shadow that video and then they write about that person's day. So there's a lot of reading and writing that can come out of this focus. And notice I put reading and writing before listening and speaking, because that's what CCRS has, so I wanted to keep that flow. We know from an ESOL standpoint that we're going to start from listening and speaking, but we want to have a focus on reading and writing as well. But with listening and speaking, we're going to get the vocabulary, the grammar, and the pronunciation in there through note-taking. And again, it doesn't have to be that the learner is doing it one-on-one with an actual worker, although that would be swell. You can invite people into the class, of course. I find that people are very excited to be able to come in and talk about themselves, career day. But they can also interview. They have a set of interview questions that is then answered through the video that you have them watch. The old Oxford Picture Dictionary interactive CD-ROM, if any of you have those in your libraries, they had job interviews, little job sections where someone talked about their job for each of the different topic areas. And those would be very appropriate for low-level learners. You can get learners working on clarifying, much in the same way that Laura was talking about those pairs working together, asking and answering questions. There's a lot of negotiation and clarifying that goes on there. And just being able to form questions, that's a key point for our learners in moving forward. Thank you, Laura. I did not pay for that testimonial. So, Suzanne, I know that your mic has some issues. Yeah, you know what, on chat, just so you know, everybody, on chat and in discussion boards, spelling goes away, and as does grammatical accuracy. You can't focus on that because otherwise you'll craft little gems for every post and you'll spend 12 hours on a post. You don't want to do that. So please feel free to go to the discussion board and don't second guess yourself. No one will be judging you. Okay, so Suzanne, did you want to say anything about this question and our inquiry on this? And I know that you'd have to do it in the chat box. Of course you'll be judging yourselves, but get over it. We have to get over ourselves. This is not a matter of world peace. There are other matters that are much bigger. So Suzanne, if you want to type in anything. Exactly. Well, maybe not that lesson. Okay, so Cynthia is saying that money and professional development time is needed. What else is needed, do you think? As always, exactly. I think we came up with the checklist. So having the state support, hopefully, a project that would provide a good living checklist, living curriculum resource list. Okay, Suzanne, thank you. And Laura said centralizing resources and quality marketing for awareness of them. Yeah, I have to tell you that the human mind is a very interesting thing because I know the quality of the marketing that goes on across states, not just in Massachusetts. And people are so overwhelmed and so time challenged that it's really difficult to make sure people know about things. And I don't know what the answer is for that because I see a lot of quality and yet I'll ask a question having just seen this phenomenal mailing go out plus social media plus opportunities to talk about it in conferences, and there's still quite a gap out in the field. So I like that. Laura just said the answer is partially cutting-edge technological knowledge management systems. I'm sure there's an acronym for that. Set Commodus. Okay. And the very first respondent to the survey didn't have a space to put his or her name. So but that person said that they would like to talk to this point. And I don't know if the very first person who responded to the survey is on our webinar right now. Will you cop to it? Of course, you won't know if you're the very first person, but you will know if you didn't type your name in, because everyone else typed their name in. But there was no space for you to type your name in when you came in. All right, what we're going to do is we're going to leave this question. Okay, terrific, Suzanne, thank you. Oh, it was Usilla, perfect, yay. So, would you like to speak to this? Oh, that's very sad. I don't know why we can't hear you. And I'm not muting you or anything. Kate, any ideas?
No,
Yes.
the phone connection is separate from Blackboard, so usually there's not really a problem with the phones.
Yeah, because I
Can
can
you hear me now?
on the
Oh,
phone.
yep, I can
yes,
hear
we
you now.
Yay.
Oh, okay. All right. I wasn't aware that the mute symbol on the computer actually connected to my phone somehow.
Oh, interesting. Great. Okay.
Was there
Well,
someone else who
delightful.
also chose this topic to talk about?
No, only you. It was only
Only
you.
me. Only me. Okay. Yeah, so we are a volunteer tutoring program. We have 100 tutors who tutor learners in 21 towns. So it's not like you can get all the tutors together very often in a classroom to teach them new concepts. They're not ESL teachers, but they are people in the community who have great career skills. They have life skills. They're well educated, and so they are in a really good position to pass along specific skills to their learners. So our challenge is, up until this WIOA initiative, our tutors have focused primarily on English skills and teaching life skills to our learners. So we need to shift their focus from teaching life skills to teaching college and career readiness skills. And our challenge with a very small staff, and I'm the only one who trains our volunteer tutors, is we need to communicate this new shift and this new focus to them, and we need to develop some really turnkey teaching ideas that we can just hand over to them, that they can then use with their learners who are at all different levels of English and have had varying levels of formal education and have a broad range of personal and professional goals. I think I read through the introductory links brief, the very first one, that had some excellent ideas under each skill to teach. There were some bright ideas. I don't know if anybody knows what I'm talking about.
Yes,
but I
we all
thought
do.
those were,
All read it.
yeah,
All
so
read
those were right. So those were excellent suggestions, I think, and I'm going to use some of those. We expanded our new tutor training to 12 hours from 9 hours so that we can incorporate an entire session just on career skills. But that's our new tutors, and so our challenge is to communicate the same information to all our current tutors and gather them all together for training. So ongoing kind of professional development training. But I will be using a lot of the ideas that are mentioned in the Bright Ideas.
And so I don't know if you, I'm sorry, I don't know if you've noticed, but you're getting a lot of ideas in the chat pod as well.
So yeah, I haven't had a chance to read through them all, but thank you for those. Those will not show up though in the? I want to.
Yeah, we're gonna try to figure out. Yeah, right now is I think recording this in a different way. So,
okay.
So we may be able to get that. If not, I will make a copy of this information. I'll figure out some way to.
Oh yeah, no, I'm reading through them. They're great ideas, I love the idea. Somebody brought it up earlier. If you invite someone into your classroom that learners can interview, I'd love to have our tutors do that. I'm sure they have a great network of professional people that they can bring to their tutoring sessions occasionally and have their learner interview them so they can practice asking questions and work-related questions. So there were some great ideas being mentioned. And then our one final challenge, if anybody has any input, is our learners don't always feel the need to work on their career skills. So some of it is also convincing our learners that these are 21st century work skills that they need to work on so that they can increase their earning potential in the long term.
And I think, you know, that really goes to a bit of what we were sharing last time, that these workplace skills and career awareness, certainly the employability skills, let's just go with the employability skills and the soft skills, these are not exclusive to the workplace. Mm-hmm. So if they're not seeing a need from a career standpoint, or that, you know, they don't see themselves necessarily going into the workplace or advancing at the workplace at this time, this is immediately applicable to their life in the community. It's applicable to their life in education.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
And I also wanted to add that you might consider doing either a Google Groups or some sort of webinar consider using Zoom so that they can gather together at a distance, so you don't have to worry necessarily about having them in the same place all the time. But even, once every couple months where they could come together and you could choose one concept, one task type, like inviting people in, for example. So if you wanted to talk about how to do that, and also the very important aspect of writing the questions that they will then ask the person who comes in. I mean, that's quite a language development piece.
Yes, yes. And
that would be,
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. No.
I was just going to say, and that's multi-level, because the level of the questions will change depending on the level of the learner.
Exactly. Yes. All right. I also thought that it might be helpful to create a weekly tip of the week, some kind of teaching tip that's related to college and career readiness, something very quick and easy to read that they can just add to their toolkit to keep their tutoring fresh.
And I would highly recommend looking not just at the CCRS for adult education, but the English language proficiency standards, because those create the scaffolds for English language learners to achieve the CCRS. And I think from a tutorial standpoint, I don't know if you would agree, Suzanne, but I think from a tutorial standpoint that the language that's used there would more readily match the English language learner information they may have gotten previously.
Right, yes.
Because the CCRS was really written with the adult basic education native speaker in mind, and of course the English language learner needs to achieve those standards, but there are scaffolds that need to be put in place for that to happen. And so a tutor needs to keep the English language development front and center alongside the complexity and the evidence and the knowledge building.
Right, exactly. Yeah, okay.
Well, let's be sure to come back to these. These are our main inquiries, and I hope you've gotten some good ideas, Scylla. I think we're a more intimate group than the actual community that we have for this webinar. So my hope would be that the discussion boards will also, in the next 4 weeks, that the discussion boards may have some additional ideas for you.
Right. Thank you, everyone.
Let's take a look at this. Let's go to the ideas about questions. Let's see how to do this. Here we go. In our next 15 minutes or so, I thought it would be good to provide a little bit of a boost as you move out into working more with this material over the next 4 weeks. I know a lot of you are doing it already, but maybe the shifting and lifting concept. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Fisher and Fry progression of text-dependent questions, but let's see if I can can I get a yes/no in the chat pod if you have seen this triangle before. Okay, so it looks like a couple of us have seen it before and some of us have not, so let me just, Fisher and Fry are a wonderful resource. Their research is terrific on college and career readiness, but they've done particularly excellent work, in my opinion, on text-dependent questions. And what I want to focus us on is just at this point the triangle, not so much the moving from from part to whole, although that is certainly a progression that makes great sense in English language learning. But as ESOL teachers working with contextualization or in ESOL programs, we want to make sure that our learners are getting the general understanding and the key details of the text. We certainly want them to then explore the vocabulary and text structure, because that's a reading strategy that will allow them to read additional texts. The author's purpose can or cannot be a focus, depending on the type of text it is. But inference is really important to build in and make sure that learners are doing inferencing, because that will make that critical thinking connection, and it will lead the learner to provide evidence. I mean, obviously, key details, you can get evidence by citing directly from the text. So that's a little more regurgitative. But if we work with inference, then we're really getting into the higher level of thinking. So before you look at anything, and by text I mean picture, image, graph, listening passage, video, and print text. Before you ever work with it, the first thing you want to do is think, obviously, what you want the learners to get from it, and then prepare yourself to know what are the concepts, the elements that you want the learners to focus on. And then you can annotate the text for yourself, or certainly make some sort of plan, because it's really hard to do this by the seat of your pants. They'll be coming out with more workplace, but this is the 3rd edition of the Picture Dictionary. I just want to see if any of my questions are here. I don't think I put them on here. Yeah. All of these questions that I'm giving you are in the content area. Okay, so you will have these questions. The next step is, for me, from a multi-level standpoint, I want to make sure that the learners can answer the questions no matter what their level. So I would start with yes, no, or alternative or questions. So I could ask, is this a classroom? Is this an ESL lab? Is this a career center? Is this a career center or a classroom? Now, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't do, prior to asking those questions, a little overview of telling students, this is a career center. At this career center, people come to help to prepare for careers. They take interest inventories. I could give an entire little spiel about this, but I can also start just by finding out what learners already know. So I have two on for details. Can you study English here? Can you get help with your career here? Is there a computer for Fatima? And of course there is none, right? So what does she have to do? And she has to wait. Is there a door on the left, a classroom, or an office? So that's getting me more into the details. Now remember, this part is not as high level as I want to go, but I want to make sure that learners have the language first before we get into the higher level thinking. I would ask vocabulary questions such as, is the schedule for the computers? Is Fatima looking at brochure? Oh, is the woman on the back wall looking at brochures or books? Is the woman at the desk a clerk or a counselor? Now I can get some inference questions. Is this a good career center? How do you know? Will Fatima be able to use a computer? How do you know? Is there a training class today? How do you know? So I can get that kind of inferencing going on. Our most obvious go-to on questions is to say things like, where is she? Why is she here? But those questions need to come later in the process, because we need to build learners' language, and then before we ask for that one dominating person to answer. Here are 6 questions that go for different parts of that triangle. Why is she visiting the center? General. What does the clerk do? How do you know? Details. What types of books are at the center? Inference. When do people use this center? Inference or personal experience. Why is a center like this helpful? What's good, bad, or interesting about visiting a career center? So those types of questions are great questions for learners to work on in a team and then report back on their answer. As you can see, this is a level of complexity and text complexity that isn't really, it's not Yes, that goes to opinion. Sorry, did I say inference? It's opinion, personal experience. Sorry. Yeah. What's good, bad, or interesting about visiting Career Center? Sorry, that was Laura's comment. But we want to be sure that we recognize that the CCRS connection of complexity and evidence and building knowledge, these three shifts that go into the College of Career Readiness, that they are not exclusive to higher level and they're not exclusive to print. We can be working with images and contextualized images at that, workplace contextualized images at that. Now for a text-dependent question, to be text-dependent, it requires the learners to identify the text as the expert in the room. So they go first to the text. Notice that that good, bad, or interesting was at the last part of the set of questions. And you want to probe the specifics of the text and focus on the language and mechanics of the text. So that image is only one image from an entire career planning page that has a lot of different vocabulary. But I can narrow it down so we can just talk about the language that is within that. Or for a higher level class, I can include more. I want to give you another little poll, an exciting little poll. First, let me find the poll to give you. TDQ, here we go. Okay, I would like you to tell me which one is, which of the 5 is not TDQ. Which of these is not a text-dependent question? Waiting on 5 more votes before we do the big reveal. One more vote. Oh, it's probably B. Yep, it was me. Okay. Right answer. Ding, 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 ding. Exactly. Laura says you can warm up and introduce with a non-TDQ, and that's absolutely true. And that's, but our go-to very often in our classes is the non-TDQ. And what happens with that is that it can take everybody down a rabbit hole for the one person who's been there and can talk about it. So what I recommend is getting closer to the text. Right. Getting closer to the text by showing the picture and asking learners, what do you see? Because that what do you see will get them into it's a career center or it's, and that would allow you then to get a poll of how many of you have visited a career center. But it's not that you're focusing from that and going again into the 30-minute warm-up. And I'm not suggesting that, Laura, you would do that. But it is something that happens quite a lot in classes. But Suzanne, you must have felt very happy to see all those right answers on TDQs. Let's go back to, yeah, that was pretty cool. So we did already talk about the occupational handbook and what it offers a little bit last time, and I hope some of you, I know some of you already know it well. If we can ask questions about these materials, and they're really terrific in that they're multi-levelable, they're differentiable because they provide a chart like this They also provide summaries of the tabs at the top. So they can be very useful. What is hard for our learners is sometimes to respond to our text-dependent questions. So one of the things that I like to do is to go into initially go into the occupational handbook and pull the images off. It's a very easy thing to do. You can use a screen capture, or very often you can just drag the image off onto your desktop and then just put it onto a slide so that we can start talking. In this case, this is the physical therapist assistant, which makes really good money. And then I can use answer cards so that I can find out at a glance what my learners are understanding about the content that I've presented. So I can ask, you know, in this case, what type of job is this, going to the occupational clusters. I can ask how much the person makes. And again, if they've looked at, oops, sorry, go back to this. If they've looked at the chart, and if we're just working off of the chart, then that kind of question is very doable for the learners. And this is a key detail question. This is a general understanding question, that it's a health career. This is a key detail in terms of how much they make. And notice there's a little bit of math awareness in terms of the approximate. In which part of the chart, what part of the chart tells you whether there will be more jobs like this in the future? Again, this is text organization and vocabulary. So these are pretty high-level concepts, high-level reading strategies that we're applying to something that is pretty rudimentary and quite contextualized. You know, we can go up to ONET, which has much higher level language, and we can work in the same way, but in this case, we would probably provide the questions to the learners and have them work on them. So that's a very brief overview of what you can do with questioning strategies and contextualization. And I will put a link in the content area to a wiki that has a whole slew of information and ideas about contextualization with TDQ. It's called TDQ CCRS. So I thought rather than doing the whole presentation for you here, because we're, you know, I really wanted us to have time to talk to each other, you have that available to you on the content, in the content area. And then I just want to take 2 minutes to talk a little bit about the rigorous team tasks that build employability skills, because I know you know these. But you'll see Dory in the lower right corner here. She participated in the CCRS Career Pathways workshop that we did not too long ago. I think it was October, if I'm right. Am I right, Dory? Was it October? Anyway, this is part of a task that I just wanted to go over with you really quickly. And again, this task and the templates will be in a handout in the content area. First step of this is to have the learners think of things that they do well. And you provide a list on the board, depending on the level of the learners. So you give about 3 minutes, you give them some sticky notes, and they write the things that they do well. Then you form teams. You can form the teams ahead of time. This is, you know, step 1, step 2 are interchangeable. But then you have the learners choose their roles. And you, of course, have to teach these concepts if the learners are not familiar with what these roles are about, what they have to do. I'll give you a second to look at the roles. After that, within the team, they take turns naming their strengths. Each time they name a strength or a skill that they can do, they put that post-it in the center of the table, and it goes around. They keep taking turns, and they can repeat what someone else says. Now, one of the reasons that I put it up this way is so that you could use this PowerPoint, if you wanted to, as directions for your class. So So this is what it would look like for the naming of the strengths. Step 4 is to categorize and summarize the strengths and skills. So they have to decide as a team what categories things fit in. So you can see that I have the driving, writing category here and the cooking, baking category down below. And you give each of the roles their specific assignments. You can see what's going on here, some pretty high-level thinking and not necessarily high-level language, although the higher the level of the learner, the more complex the language and sophisticated the language would be. In order to summarize the strengths, you want to give learners a sentence frame. And I noticed, unfortunately, when I came to look at the PowerPoint today that I had left the sentence frame off. But for example, it would say something like, our team has the following strength in common, line. Some of us, line. Others, line. No one, line. So there would be that kind of a frame, and I promise you'll have that in the handout. Then the learners work together to prepare a visual aid. So they write their strengths on a sign along with their name, and they take a photo of the sign and they email that photo to you. So there are quite a number of steps in this, but think of the number of employability skills that were just covered. Anybody want to take a quick type in of 1 or 2 employability skills that happened with that? Definitely collaboration and teamwork. What professional skills went into that? What creative skills went into that? What leadership skills went into that? And it doesn't just stop there. They rehearse a presentation where they present the statement and they present it to other teams. So they're simultaneous presentations, exactly, listening to others. And the teams take notes on what they heard. So in a project like this, and if you looked at the content area, you saw a e-magazine on Rigor, which has a lot of project-based learning. But team tasks and projects like this not only provide many opportunities for language development. Obviously, they're reading, they're writing, they're listening, they're speaking, they're working on accurate grammar and pronunciation in order to present summarize their results. If there's data, then there's math at work. There are all manner of vocabulary as well. There are all manner of things that they're working on that have to do with employability, soft skills. And they are also deeply engaged, and it's authentic. Exactly. They're deeply, deeply engaged. So I hope that when you look at the materials online, you'll consider maybe working with something of that nature as we go forward. And speaking of going forward, let's take a look at what's coming up, what's next. Okay, I think this is in my webinar too. We're going to be 1 minute over, but I promise we'll leave very swiftly after that. So where we're going from here is that hopefully you will continue from what you were working on from the last interim session, integrating the ideas and options that were in the content area, in the modules, in the handouts. You'll see a number of task templates for graphic organizers and projects, many different things in the content area for you to explore. This does not mean you should do all of them. Just choose one that intrigues you. But then I will ask you to share a reflection on the discussion board based on what you did. And ideally you would do that sometime before we meet on the 24th. So hopefully you would make an effort to get onto the discussion board, let's say by the 22nd, so that there's an opportunity for you to reflect. And I, of course, will go on there and answer any questions you have. And if you want to email me, that's great too. But I think we already saw just from the little responses you got, Scylla, the few responses you got, the few very valid responses you got to the queries about training tutors, that we are a tremendous resource for each other. And then when we meet again on the 24th, we'll discuss what you reflected on, and I'll ask some questions again about our inquiries if we've proceeded on our ideas about the benefits and challenges and the support we need. And again, let me remind you that everybody needs to complete either the instructional analysis of your contextualization or the administrative analysis of your contextualization. So if you haven't done that form yet, which I've mentioned in a couple of emails, and I'll mention again in our follow-up, please be sure to take care of that so that you're in a good place to create an action plan based on your analysis. Okay. And with that, we've gone 2 minutes over. I apologize. I hope your blood sugar has not dropped down to your knees. Is there anything that anybody would like to say before we head off, either by phone or... Oh, you're quite welcome, Suzanne. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. This has been great. And I took a workshop with you a few years ago, and towards the end, those last things just refreshed for me.
Oh, good.
What I learned.
Good.
So that was excellent.
All right. So be sure